Hi, my name is John, and today I'll be going through what a closed passage is, how to best approach these types of questions, and how you can identify what you should put in that empty space to maximize your marks in tests such as the New South Wales Selective exam that's coming up. Let's get into it. To begin with, what is a closed passage? A closed passage is a type of reading question which you see in comprehension exams, which test your ability in comprehension and your ability to apply in different scenarios. A simple closed passage that I'm sure you've seen before is when they just remove one question or one word from a text, and you have a multiple choice, so A, B, C, D, to identify what word fits best in that spot that's actually blank. It requires the student to understand language and context so you can see and determine the clues to know what is actually missing in that particular spot and to answer it appropriately. The most basic form of this is usually evident in exams, even in primary school, such as the ICAS exam or even the NAPLAN exam. So the question that I have popped up here on the screen is a question taken from the ICAS exam, and it's an example of the most basic form of closed passage question that you may see. The answers are from A, B, C, and D, taken from one of the four options that you have available, and you have to determine which one fits in the blank spot. The number of words deleted usually indicates the level. If the more words that are deleted, the more difficult the actual question is. This is actually exemplified in this 2021 Selective Exam Sample paper, which was provided, where instead of removing one word, which is actually seen in ICAS exams, they actually removed an entire sentence and added a couple of different levels of complexity to it. When they only remove one word, like in the example here, they actually only are looking for something quite specific, whether it be grammar or sentence structure, or even an additional word like vocabulary. This is also supported by the fact that this question is usually given to Year 3 and 4 students, so feel free to pause the screen if you want to examine it closer and you want to try it out yourself. However, the focus of this video is to go through the 3 approaches that you should actually do and undertake in order to answer the more difficult closed type questions. In particular, I will focus on the 2021 sample paper that was released for the New South Wales Selective exam, just because they've taken away certain sentences and it's clearly more difficult compared to the closed type passage that I've shown earlier. They've added a level of complexity where there's even an extra sentence which shouldn't be used, and we know that there can be flow-on effects if you actually use that and you get tricked. It now covers paragraph patterns, literal comprehension, relationships, specific phonic elements, process strategies, vocabulary, language structures, and implied and inferred comprehension. I won't be going over how to answer the specific question in the paper itself, but I will go over some techniques and approaches that you should actually employ. Here is now the 3-step process that you need to do in order to answer these type of closed passage questions. The first thing you need to do is make sure you read the entire text before you go to the question. This is to ensure that you have a general understanding of what the text is even asking you about. If you try to skip, instead of reading the entire text first and skip to the actual answers or potential answers and then work backwards, you are more likely to make a mistake and therefore get lower marks. This is critical as, based on the structure of the actual exam, if you make one mistake in a certain area of the test, it can actually create another mistake in another area, therefore leading to flow-on effects that are absolutely unintended and lead to you losing more marks than you actually need to. The second step is, after you finish reading the entire text, make sure to read the entire potential answers in the box below. Have a good thorough read over it and make sure you familiarize yourself with every potential answer. Something important to note here is that you do not want to be basing off the potential answers in the box and seeing where to put it in the actual text. Instead, you want to do the absolute opposite. Go back in the text and see what is the best answer possible from the table or the box below. A little confusing, I know, but hopefully the picture on the screen that I have helps clarify what I'm trying to mean. If it doesn't, let me know and I can dive deeper. The third and last step of this approach is to go from the top to the bottom of the text. You want to go from a sequential order in order for you to make it the most efficient way possible. Usually what I see is some students who actually answer this type of question, they may start from the first question, then they go to the end of the question, then they go to the middle, the third question, then the 5th question, etc., etc. They kind of go all over the place. The reason why this is not the most effective or efficient way is because even though you might have an inkling of where the answer is, usually the answers are sequential. So if the beginning of the exam, you already know that it sets the scene, an introduction. The potential answer will have to be something that also sets the scene and introduces what's kind of going on. But if you kind of go all over the place, your thinking and the way that you actually approach the question is a little bit confused and haphazard, and you're not putting yourself in the best position possible. If you're generally unsure of what to actually do when you're actually answering the question, that's totally okay. What you should do is take a second, pause, and give it a go. If you still are spending a little bit more time than you actually plan to, instead skip that question and move on. By the time you actually answer the other questions, the nature of this closed passage exam is that once you answer the other questions and you're quite confident in it, by the time you go back to the question you're not too sure about, there'll be limited responses that you can actually choose from, because hopefully you're more confident in the other questions that you've actually answered. So you'll have a higher likelihood of answering the remaining one. This three-step approach in answering closed passage questions is actually supported by the literature. Diane writes that in order to best answer these types of questions, you have to read the entire text at least a minimum of 3 times. Rereading the text sequentially is the best approach. Less successful students who reread it do so in a more haphazard way. This is especially the case when they are reading over and referring to different information and parts of the text, but they still don't have an understanding on particular vocabulary, or they have a limited understanding of what's kind of going on in the first place. Excuse the change in scenery, but that's the end of part 1 of this video on closed passage type questions. I've went over what it is, how you can actually approach it, and the 3-step method in maximizing most amount of marks possible in terms of going over and reading the text first, looking at the potential answers, and going sequentially from top to bottom in order to make sure that you're not answering it all haphazardly. In the next part of the video I'll go over the techniques that you can actually employ, the most fundamental ones, even to the more advanced ones, to determine which is in those blank areas, which is arguably one of the hardest parts. Execution is key, but you can't execute if you don't even know the techniques in the first place. So definitely stay tuned for that. And if you enjoyed this video, please let me know down in the comments below, and I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next time.